Welcome to Scaling with People, your weekly playbook for turning chaos into compounding growth. Each week, we go under the hood with battle-tested experts in all areas of business, from marketing to sales, operations, finance, and people, plus product and leadership, to unpack the plays, numbers, and systems that turn chaos into compounding growth. Learn straight from founders and experts who've done it and continue to do it successfully. There's zero fluff, just moves that you can steal immediately. This podcast is brought to you by Guide to HR, human expertise, AI-powered impact. Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm Guinevere Curry, your host and founder and CEO to Guide to HR. So what's the secret to getting the absolute best out of your people? Hint, it's not micromanagement. Ugh, I don't even want to say that word, or flash perks. This week on Scaling with People, we're joined by Kelli Lester, co-founder of Onyx Rising and a master at transforming teams through inclusive leadership and crystal clear vision. So we're going to unpack today how to tap into what truly drives performance. Creative environments where people want to show up and contribute and grow. We're talking employee engagement that goes beyond surveys, leadership that brings out potential, and strategic visioning that aligns everyone on the path to scale. If you're ready to lead in a way that actually unleashes your team's full power, not just managing it, this is your blueprint. So let's dive in. Kelli, it's so great to have you on the call today. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, Guinevere. My name is Kelli Lester, as you mentioned, and just a little bit about me. I have been in the space of change for 25 plus years, but I did start my career in media for a decade. Thought I wanted to be Oprah. Didn't work out. You all know me already. But long story short, that particular grounding around communication was really useful when it came to really communicating broadly in organizations. So for the last 25 years, I have been in human resources, done specific work as a strategic consultant and director of diversity and inclusion inside organizations. And then for the last 15 years, I've been consulting, went off on my own, and here we are.
I love it. Okay, so let's dive into this. How in this particular environment that we have today, technology, the social media, the environment outside of our own countries, the safety of people, the health of people, I mean, so much, we could probably spend an hour just listing all the things that are happening in today's society. But in a business setting, with all of that going on people's minds, they're bringing it into the office. How does a manager and a leader get the most out of their people when they are so stressed out about what's going on and they're taxed already? They're already like max capacity. I could probably keep going, but I'm going to give you the floor and help me answer this question.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge question, right? So no doubt we are all faced. I think it's too much noise, right? It's just too much noise. And we also have an environment just externally from our organization where we are being pulled in many different directions. And it's thought that we should just leave all of that at the door, right? But people cannot.
Yeah.
And so I think we went from a phase of calling work-life balance to work-life integration. And I would say post-COVID, we really have to understand what that looks like. It has changed cultures dramatically, how we dress, how we lead, how we develop, how we look at promotions. And then you add the complexity of the younger generation into the workforce, and with multiple, four, sometimes more generations working together with very different expectations. This is super difficult. So if you're struggling with it, you're not alone.
Yeah.
The short answer to it is inclusive leadership, quite frankly. So I believe it's actually a twofold answer. So one would be, what can you do as a leader when leading your teams or your people or your organization? And then what might the organization do? So I'm going to start with the leader, right? Because many of us don't feel like we probably can lead our organizations without the help of our teams or our CEOs or our leadership teams. So what can you do individually? The first step, I think, is really understanding who your people are and what their motivations are and what their career aspirations are. And I wouldn't say that this should be done by someone else. So I think a lot of times leaders actually point to HR, point to DEI practitioners, point to, this is your job. No,
Yep.
leading people is part of your job. When you move from an individual contributor to a leader, a lot of organizations are not equipping leaders for that. And we are ascending almost to the C-suite, and we still don't have that skill. So really, what does it look like to really know your team? I liken this a lot to a family. So for example, I have two children, a girl and a boy. They couldn't be more different. One is a super extrovert, the other is a super introvert. And I always tell this story how I wanted them both to go to college, but what it took for them to really be motivated to do so was a very different path, even though the objective was the same, the goal was the same. And so, what it looked like for my son, it was very easy. It was just push him along, send him down a different path. With my daughter, it took a lot more conversation around, well, what do you want to do? Let me go with you. What does it look like? What are you most interested in? How might I tie those things that you're interested in into potential careers? How might I connect you with people? So it was a much different path. And so when we think about our teams and our organizations, we have to see people uniquely for who they are. And we cannot push upon them what worked for us in the 90s. Right?
Not to age us.
It also is not a great business strategy, right? Because
No.
if you're developing people based on what worked for you, they will fail today. If you develop people only for today, you won't necessarily achieve your objectives in your business. So you really have to look at your future self or your future organization, your future talent in that individual. And I think another big thing is that when we add people to our teams, we have a new team. And I don't think leaders really get that. Like when we have a new team member added, there's a need for additional team building. In this environment, I have worked with clients where the direct report has never seen their boss in person. And that is not uncommon anymore. And
No,
it's
it's not.
a lot easier to build a team once you've been in person and now you're remote versus what I've been dealing with a lot of my clients post COVID is, yeah, they've never met. And so
Yeah.
there's a need to.
That breaking of the bread moment with someone is such a key relationship builder.
It is. And so we have to be strategic about what does it look like to build team and take advantage of those of the moments that matter. Right, we bring everybody in for an annual meeting. Are we building in dinner? Are we, and then uniquely, and think about it like this: we all have cable, most of us, right? And even the channels that we select, right, is very much in a space that it's uniquely what Guinevere likes, what
Yeah.
Kelly. Even Netflix has your own profiles for everybody. Very similarly, we have to really understand what are the motivations for team member A, B, C, D, right? And how might I give them feedback? How do, would I motivate them with money? Do I motivate them with events, time off? And it's very different when you start looking at the generations as one aspect alone, right? Many of younger millennials in particular, I haven't worked with a ton of Gen Zs. It depends on the culture. Some tech cultures I have. But with millennials in particular, they want time off and they're not like Gen X or boomers where we will just wait our turn. They're not.
Yeah.
They will leave your organization if people aren't really looking at your people strategy where it looks at the uniqueness and the needs. Career development. There was a time, I think, early on where you get hired and people say, okay, and this is what you're going to do next, and this is what you're going to do. We don't have that anymore. There's a lot of ownership on the individual to own their own career, but the organizations aren't providing the career pathing understanding. And so the default is that you end up with cultures where the way we build relationships is informal. So if you're not close to leadership, the proximity bias, right? You're not promoted, you're not getting exposure. And so when you think about global teams or remote teams, you really have to make the time. And I think we did a great job in the United States in particular, at least what I've seen during COVID, but post-COVID, I'm hearing some of our CEOs say, everybody come back to the office. And so
hard to hear that.
Right. We went back to business as usual, and that business as usual could really mean a potential dip or failure in your business strategies and your goals.
Well, and too, like I've worked with one CEO who is like, he wants to do that, but he also recognizes that he doesn't have the power of an Amazon or a Wells Fargo, right? Like he's not a big organization that has that power that knows that like, well, their brand could go out and hire five more people tomorrow if five people walked out the door and or not walked out the door, it never came through the door, right? So you also got to understand what your buying power is, what your brand is, and what you need out of your people and what's going to be the right culture fit for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I love this inclusive leadership mindset. And I think about it too. Like I've kind of shared, post COVID, it's really been all about, well, I should say pre-COVID, it's been all about the employee has to figure out their manager and has to work towards basically like what the manager needs. And then COVID happened and that really shift to as a manager, I now need to figure out what does each individual need. And it goes to that inclusivity leadership. And you're right, like people are motivated by different things. Now, you have a sales org, most likely the majority of those people are all going to be motivated by money, right? But outside of that, in any other kind of org or department function, it's probably going to be a mixture and it's going to be depending on where the person is in their life, what's happening. Maybe they are motivated by money because they want to get engaged and they want to buy a house and they know they want to have a baby soon, right? Like so that might be their motivation in that moment, but that might not be their key motivation over their entire career. So it's not even just understanding who they are as a human being, but where they are in their lifespan too.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And I think, a simple takeaway or strategy, and this is going to sound really interesting because people are like, what? Is ask. I'm working on a project right now. So I do work with for-profit and nonprofits. The particular study and project I'm working on is a health equity study. And they coined the phrase, I believe, the community is the expert, right? And I love that concept because if leaders begin to understand that the expertise and the answers to our business problems, to how to motivate people, it really lies within our people. But
Yeah.
we typically ask. So we either A, aren't asking, or we're asking the wrong questions. So many bigger organizations, even mid-size, we do engagement surveys. And I don't, and some of my clients do pulse surveys as well. So, which I
Sure.
really, we're trying to measure belonging. For example, I'm seeing that being done quite a bit now. So they'll ask pulse questions every quarter, right? So I ask a lot of my clients, and particularly the HR leaders, to really take a look at what your trends have been in those surveys and really understand where your weak points are and then understand where your greatest strengths are. I think a lot of times HR leaders have been taught to look at what's wrong and fix it, but we don't look at what's right and leverage it. So
Mm.
organizational level, I recommend that leaders and organizations really look at where, do a heat map. What do you do well? Where are you weak? And then create strategies for both. Well,
It's
some
almost a SWOT analysis a little bit, right? Your strengths and
absolutely.
weaknesses.
But what we see is like action teams on what went wrong, right?
Yeah.
But versus like, let's match a great leader with a leader that has some opportunity. Because why? We'll listen to our peers
Mhm.
better than we'll listen sometimes in any other direction. And then actually it moves things forward. But the
Yeah.
big point is ask. And so ask at an organizational level, at a survey, being very particular about what are those muscles that we want to build in our culture, and then
Yeah.
get your questions that way. And then ask within your teams versus make the assumption, like you said, I'm at a different stage in life. And then you just prove continuously ask. So something as simple as how you structure your, your one-on-one meetings, your performance reviews, those kinds of conversations, where you have them. Do you do one quarterly, like you said, to break bread moments? At least
Mhm.
try to meet in person at a minimum, one-on-one with each staff, and do that consistently across every group. For example, if I only see Guinevere speaking to Kelli in person, but not John, right?
Right.
It creates a very different. It can lead to potential biases or perception of bias, right? So the
Yeah.
big point here is ask. The answers to most of our questions really lies in that. I have seen organizations spend millions, if not thousands and millions of dollars on, oh, everybody needs this, let's give them that. But
Hmm.
if we ask, it could be something that doesn't cost you anything but some time.
Yeah, that is so true. Two things I was thinking on as you were talking about that. Some of the things I will call out is don't ask in a check the box off kind of way. Be in the moment, be authentic and sincere when you're asking what's going on. I can't tell you how many times I will get on a call with someone and they'll ask me how's it going, what's going, like, how are you? And I can tell based off of the video, based off the tone of the voice, based off of what follows after I answer it, they don't care. They are
Yeah.
literally just saying it to check the box off. So I would actually prefer you not ask me that if you don't care my answer. And I've tested it with a couple of managers and direct, people that I peers and my managers in past, and I've specifically using different words to answer their same question to see if they will respond differently. And if they don't, it is a clear sign they don't give a crap. And
Yeah.
that is like that is worse than not asking, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think, and so I liken that to how do we demonstrate it, right?
Yeah.
And so, well, we can get into this, but in those kinds of conversations, career conversations, one-on-ones, yes, don't ask if you don't care. But how do you demonstrate that you care, right? So at the end of those conversations, you can literally end them and say, okay, here's what I can do. Here's what I can't, so be honest is how you close the loop on that to me.
Yeah.
But you're right. So organizationally, if you're doing surveys, if there's no action from the survey, right, what was the point? And you do that
Yeah.
over time, it actually can hurt your team or your culture,
Yes.
right? It hurt engagement because it's like, yeah, you asked, but for the
Yep.
last 4 years, you've done nothing. What do you do?
Exactly.
You don't even, I've seen organizations that don't even report back any level of the results, right?
That's the worst case scenario. Yeah.
Exactly.
Don't do it then. Just don't do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think we demonstrated on a broader, since I use the survey example, you want to think up front, are we going to match two leaders together, one in the
Mhm.
red, one in the green, right? Are we going to communicate the results of the survey and monitor belonging all year? So
Mhm.
be very mindful of that and intentional doing that in team meetings,
Exactly.
etc. At
Yeah.
an individual level, you can really ask and then follow up at the end around here's what I can do
Yeah.
without, what will work, or I can't do that. What would it look like if we did this? Would that demonstrate XYZ? Will that work?
Hmm.
And I think people don't do that. To your point, they're checking the box
Hmm.
at my one-on-one. And I think this gets very difficult if you're like a sales leader with 50 or 100 people. This is
Sure.
hard,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we really have to be careful with the more people we have, the more of these conversations, our eyes are rolling in the back of our heads every time HR says, oh, we got to do this again, right? So
Yeah.
you want to be mindful of how you're going to structure those conversations, making sure that they're meaningful, not scheduling them, and that this is minor, right? I mean, you and I know this, but I think it's preparation, right? Our
Yes. Yeah.
preparation before any conversation, and particularly with those that report to us. I often put the onus on my direct report,
I do the same.
right? Like, what are the things that are important to you?
Yeah.
Like these conversations to go. When I have a new team member, I ask them to fill in the blank. A good day for me looks like what?
Yes.
Fill the rest of
Yeah.
that, right?
Love that.
And those type of things help you to proactively get ahead of any issues. What often happens is that people wait till there is a mistake
Mm.
or a clash, and then
Yeah.
address it.
Yeah. A couple other questions that you're getting to know new team members, or maybe even just like if you're a manager and you're like, oh, I've had my members under me forever. Why don't you just throw out a curveball and be like, hey, I want to just like sit down like I've never talked to you before and I want to learn something new about you. throw in some questions like, how do you appreciate being acknowledged, right? Some people do not like public recognition. Some people do. Some people would prefer you just say, send me a thank you and a $25 gift card to Amazon, right? Like how do you appreciate acknowledgement? How do you want to hear feedback so that you're open to it? One of the things I've really learned recently is asking, are you open to hearing some feedback or feed forward, right? And kind of getting that person into the mindset. And then when I get stuck, because I'm not a word girl, I'm a math girl, so words can fail me sometimes. When I get stuck on what I should ask next to try to dive in deeper, I go to my go-to question. Well, what does good look like for you?
There you go. That's
Yep.
beautiful. I
Yep.
love but by the way, what we're talking about works in relationships at home and work.
True. Yeah.
We can put this in our toolkit and make it part of how we
Yes.
operate. My old mentor used to say there's words and there's meaning, right? So
Mm.
I can ask someone, what does respect mean? And every person will give me a different answer,
This
right?
is true. Yes. Yeah.
And so I love what you just shared around that. Very simple.
Yeah, the semantics of a meaning of a word. I mean, I had a guest several podcasts ago who she wanted to start with, let me explain the definition of this word I'm putting out here so that we are all starting this conversation on the same playing field. And I was like, whoa, that was a game changer right there. Because you're right. We all hear a word, and the interpretation of that word is based off of how we were raised, the experiences we've had along the way, the people that have influenced that, right? And so even in the same household, children will have a different definition.
Yeah.
Even if they've been raised by the same parents in the same house, in the same location, the same schools, they're still going to have different experiences. And it's going to impact and influence how they understand and see the world.
Yeah. And all of these things go a long way. I often will say that when I am vulnerable as a leader, my teams will take a bullet for me. They will do literally almost anything. And I didn't learn that until, I was a young leader at the time. And I really appreciated that lesson because I literally thought I had to be, I think, given my age, we really had, it was a command and control style of leadership that
Yes.
was acceptable, but it's been turned on the dime, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
don't think that leaders in that Gen X space have learned naturally. So we have to be intentional about understanding ourselves, which is one of my first keys to inclusive leadership is
Mm-hmm.
self-awareness.
Yeah.
To the point you just made, we have to understand how we see the world before we start interacting with others. Because if we're not aware, well, where did I get that from? Why do I think that people that come in to work at 8:30 in the morning in person are more productive? And is it impacting how I even hear them? Right. And so I think we
Mm-hmm.
have level bias around that too,
Yeah.
right? Our go-to people, right? And so what I've had to do with my own personal journey of self-awareness is be mindful of that and then intentionally force myself to go to other people,
Yeah.
to keep that in mind when I'm assessing talent. So I have a colleague that I used to work with. Her name is Fran. We still are really actually good friends. And she thought so different from me. An amazing talent. She really could have probably retired, but she chose to be on my team. And so there was an age difference as well. And one of the things I would always intentionally go to Fran because I know that she would tell me the truth. She was at a stage and age in her life where there was literally almost no filter, so she had no problem with the truth, right? Because
Yep.
sometimes reports won't tell you, right?
Right. Yeah.
And because she thought so different from me and she had different skill sets than other people on the team, different experiences and backgrounds, I always got a better product when she looked at it. And so
Yeah.
I had to be intentional to go to people that didn't think like me, didn't act like me, that had a different leadership style. And that really proved to be make our team successful because I was literally leveraging the strengths of everyone on our team, whether it was lived experience, age experience, industry experience, and that really proved to be very successful. So I think self-awareness is the number one inclusive leadership trait, and I always start with that. The next thing, and you were talking about it, so I wanted to bring it up, is our ability to amplify others. To the point we may not want to put Sarah on Front Street, right? In the meeting. And
Right.
hey, are you ready to talk? Like Sarah may be an introvert, first of all.
Yeah.
So are we sending notes in advance to Sarah, to the team saying, here's what I want to talk about? Another way is if you're amplifying others, let's have Sarah lead the meeting or someone. Yeah, I really would love for you to lead the meeting. It takes the pressure off of us if we're a middle manager, right? We're stuck with the
Mhm.
executives need this, my people need that. Let's empower the team. You don't have to do everything. You don't
That
have
is so true.
speak and lead every meeting, right? And
Yeah.
let's see what your team is made of in the first place, right?
Well, and that makes you be a better manager and a leader because you're now giving your direct reports the capability to experience, grow, and be able to become you in the future, right? So I love all this, and I feel like we could probably talk about this for hours on end, but unfortunately, we're coming to an end. So, Kelli, as we wrap up, is there any last thought or tip you want to share with the audience today?
I think the biggest tip I would share is think about what empowerment means for your team and learn those different definitions or words and create an action behind the question to the point you were making. Let's not ask if we have no intention to truly demonstrate inclusive leadership.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Kelli. It was great having you on the call today. And for those listening, I hope you got some great tidbits, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Have a great one, everyone. Bye. That's a wrap for today's episode of Scaling with People. If you got value from this conversation, do me a favor, share it with someone building something big. And hey, I'd love to hear your take. Drop a comment, shoot me a message, or start a conversation. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the bold, unfiltered strategies we drop every week. I'm Guinevere Query, founder and CEO of Guide to HR, where we help high-growth companies scale smart with people-first strategies and AI-powered systems that don't just keep up, they lead. If you're building fast and want your HR to move faster, head to guidetohr.com and let's talk. And remember, scale isn't just about speed, it's about people. Until next time, have a great one.